Nobody in that glittering ballroom knew that the woman scrubbing the floors had already changed the most powerful man in the room forever. She just didn't know he was there yet. The night Kang Tae-hyun arrived at the Mirai Hotel's group annual gala, Seoul held its breath. Camera flashes lit the marble entrance like lightning. Reporters pressed against the velvet ropes, shouting his name, reaching their microphones toward the man who had turned his grandfather's modest inn chain into a $15 billion empire before the age of 34. He walked the length of the red carpet without smiling, without waving, without doing anything that resembled warmth. Beside him, Han Seo-rin floated in a silver gown that cost more than most people earned in a year. She smiled for both of them. Inside the ballroom, past the champagne towers and the string quartet, and the senators and celebrities who had been placed carefully around round tables like expensive centerpieces, a woman in a gray uniform pushed a mop across the far end of the floor. Naomi Johnson moved quietly, the way she had learned to move in spaces that were not built for her. She kept her eyes down. She kept her pace steady. She had 2 more sections to finish before the VIP guests moved in, and her feet already ached from the double shift she had started at 5 that morning. She was wringing out the mop when she heard the crowd surge near the entrance. She looked up without thinking. It was reflex, the same reflex that makes a person flinch at a loud sound. And then she saw him. The mop handle slipped from her hands and clattered against the marble floor. 3 people turned to look at her. She didn't notice them. She could not breathe. She could not move. Because the man walking through those doors with his jaw set and his black suit pressed to military precision and his cold, unreadable eyes scanning the room, that man was supposed to be a memory. A wound she had spent 2 years convincing herself had finally healed. Kang Tae-hyun, alive and devastating, and 10 years removed from the boy who used to make her laugh in a tiny university apartment in Chicago while snow piled against the windows outside. The memories did not come slowly. They crashed into her all at once. Tae-hyun, sitting cross-legged on her dorm room floor, eating instant noodles and arguing passionately about architecture. Tae-hyun reaching across a library table to wipe ink off her cheek without asking. Tae-hyun whispering against her hair that he had never felt like himself until he met her. And then the other memories, the ones that came later. His mother's voice on the phone, cold and deliberate as a blade. The envelope of money left at her door. The threat wrapped in polished words. The choice she had made in a bathroom at 3 a.m. with her hands on her stomach and tears running down her wrists. She grabbed the mop handle from the floor and walked quickly in the opposite direction. She did not allow herself to look back. That night, in her basement apartment in the Mapo district, Naomi sat on the edge of her mattress long after she should have been asleep. The ceiling above her had a water stain shaped like a hand. Rain ticked softly against the small window near the top of the wall. Across the room, in the second-hand crib she had painted yellow herself, her son slept on his back with his arms stretched wide open, the way babies sleep when they have not yet learned that the world is not entirely safe. Naomi watched him breathe and tried to remember why she had chosen this, why she had not fought, why she had taken that envelope and run. Then Jaden made a small sound in his sleep and turned his head, and she saw his face in the pale light from the window, and she remembered immediately. She remembered everything. "Mama will never let them hurt you," she whispered. "No matter what." She did not sleep that night. The next morning arrived with the kind of cruelty that only bad timing can produce. Naomi's babysitter, Mrs. O from the 3rd floor, called at 7:15 to say her own daughter had gone into early labor and she needed to go to the hospital. Naomi stood in her kitchen with the phone pressed to her ear and calculated, in real time, every possible option she had, and watched each one collapse before she could hold it. She could not take an unpaid absence. She had already used both of her emergency days when Jaden had an ear infection the month before. She was 3 weeks behind on rent. She had $32 in her bank account, and payday was Friday. She looked at Jaden. He was sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor, very seriously trying to put a toy car into a plastic cup. "Okay," she said, mostly to herself. "Okay." She packed his small bag with snacks and his favorite cartoon on her cracked tablet, bundled him into his coat, and carried him on her hip the entire 40-minute bus ride to the Mirai Tower. She told herself it would only be for a few hours. She told herself she would keep him hidden in the janitor's room on the 4th floor, where nobody important ever went. She told herself she had no other choice, which was the only part that was completely true. For a while, it worked. Jaden sat in the small room surrounded by his snacks, watching cartoons with the volume turned all the way down, while Naomi moved quickly through the executive floors with her cart. She checked on him every 20 minutes. She told him to stay. She told him she would be right back. Each time he nodded very seriously, the way 2-year-olds nod when they have not yet understood that instructions are not suggestions. It was on her 4th check that she was intercepted in the hallway by Han Seo-rin. Seo-rin had not planned to be on the cleaning floor. She had come to find Tae-hyun's assistant to complain about the placement of her name card at last night's gala, and she had taken a wrong turn, and finding herself in a hallway that smelled of cleaning solution and felt beneath her, she had already decided someone was going to feel her irritation about it. Naomi happened to be closest. "You," Seo-rin said, pointing at her the way someone might point at an object that had been placed incorrectly. "Did you clean the executive lounge this morning?" "Yes, ma'am," Naomi said. "There is a streak on the glass partition. I saw it when I walked past. It's unacceptable. I'll fix it right away. Are you rushing me?" Seo-rin's voice sharpened. "I'm speaking to you." "No, ma'am, I'm sorry." Seo-rin stepped closer, looking Naomi up and down the way a person inspects something they are considering returning. Then she reached out and flicked the collar of Naomi's uniform with 2 fingers. "You have a stain on your uniform. That's a reflection of this company. Of my fiancé's company." She paused to let that land. "What's your name?" "Naomi Johnson." "Well, Naomi Johnson, if I see another streak on that glass, or another stain on your uniform, or if I see your face in any area where I am present, I will personally speak to management about whether your position here is still appropriate." She smiled, and it was the most dangerous kind of smile, the kind that has been practiced. "Do we understand each other?" Naomi kept her face completely still. "Yes, ma'am." It took everything she had. She was still standing in that hallway, breathing slowly through her nose, when the call came through on her work radio. Security on the 38th floor was reporting a small child wandering the executive corridor. Naomi's blood turned to ice. The boardroom on the 38th floor held 22 of the most important business figures in South Korea. The merger being discussed at that table would restructure the telecommunications landscape of 3 countries. Kang Tae-hyun sat at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone, listening to a senior executive walk through a 60-slide financial projection with the grim patience of a man who had already identified every flaw in the presentation and was waiting for the speaker to catch up. The room was so quiet that when the large double doors at the end slowly, silently swung open, everyone heard them. Nobody moved at first. They all assumed it was an assistant with a message. They waited for the click of professional shoes on the hardwood floor. Instead, what they heard was the soft, uneven pat, pat, pat of small hands and knees moving across the surface. Jaden crawled into the boardroom holding a red toy car in one fist and looking around with the calm, observational interest of a scientist entering a new habitat. He paused just inside the doors